The bolt of lightning that split the sky illuminated a woman clinging to the side of an overturned stagecoach. And Travis, Yancey knew he had about 30 seconds to reach her before the flash flood swept everything downstream. He drove his heels into his horse's flanks, and thunder plunged forward through the churning water, fighting against the current that threatened to drag them both under. The rain came down in sheets so thick he could barely see more than a few feet ahead, but he had spotted that coach from the ridge above and knew someone was in trouble. "Hold on," Travis shouted over the roar of wind and water. The woman's face turned toward him, pale and terrified in the darkness. Her dress was plastered to her body, and her hair hung in wet ropes around her shoulders. She had one arm hooked through the luggage rack on top of the coach, while the rest of her body was submerged in the rushing water. Travis brought Thunder as close as he dared. The horse was sure-footed and brave, but even the best mount could be swept away in this kind of flood. He leaned out of the saddle, extending his arm toward the woman. "You have to let go and grab my hand. I cannot swim," she cried, her voice barely audible over the storm. "You do not have to swim. Just reach for me." Travis steadied himself in the stirrups and stretched as far as he could. The woman looked at the churning water below her, then back at Travis. He could see her fear, but he also saw determination flash in her eyes. She took a breath and released her grip on the coach, her hand shooting out to grasp his. Travis's fingers locked around her wrist, and he hauled her toward him with all his strength. The current tried to tear her away, but he held fast, his muscles screaming with the effort. Thunder shifted beneath him, compensating for the sudden weight, and Travis managed to pull the woman up and across his lap. She was gasping and shaking but alive. "Get your arms around me," Travis commanded, and she obeyed immediately, wrapping herself around him like a vine. He could feel her trembling against his chest as he turned Thunder away from the flood and urged him toward higher ground. The horse needed no encouragement to leave the dangerous water behind. They climbed the muddy slope, Thunder's hooves slipping and scrambling for purchase. Travis leaned forward in the saddle to help balance the extra weight and kept one arm locked around the woman's waist. Behind them, the stagecoach gave a final groan and was swept away downstream, disappearing into the darkness. By the time they reached the shelter of a rocky overhang halfway up the hillside, both Travis and the woman were shaking from cold and exertion. He dismounted first, then reached up to help her down. Her legs buckled the moment her feet touched the ground, and he caught her before she fell. "Easy now," Travis said, supporting her weight. "You are safe." The woman looked up at him, water streaming down her face. "The driver," she gasped. "He was thrown clear when we overturned. I tried to see where he went, but the water was too fast." Travis's jaw tightened. There was no way anyone could have survived being thrown into that flood, but he did not want to say as much to this terrified woman. "Right now we need to worry about keeping you alive. Can you walk?" She nodded and tried to take a step, but her legs were still unsteady. Travis kept his arm around her waist and guided her deeper into the shelter of the overhang. It was not much protection from the storm, but it was better than being out in the open. Thunder followed them in, his ears flicking nervously at each crack of thunder. Travis quickly assessed their situation. The woman was soaking wet and shivering violently. He had some supplies in his saddlebags, but no way to start a fire in this weather. The best he could do was try to shield her from the wind and wait out the storm. He pulled his bedroll from behind his saddle and wrapped it around her shoulders. "What is your name?" Travis asked as he worked. "Delilah," she said through chattering teeth. "Delilah Parker." "Travis Yancey." "Where were you headed, Miss Parker?" "Fort Laramie. I was to meet my uncle there. He owns a mercantile." She pulled the bedroll tighter around herself. "Are we far from town?" "About 15 miles, Travis said, But there is no way we can travel in this storm, especially at night. We will have to wait until morning." Delilah nodded, still shaking. Travis positioned himself beside her, blocking as much of the wind as he could with his own body. Thunder stood nearby, his bulk providing additional shelter. The storm raged on around them, lightning illuminating the landscape in brief, stark flashes. "I thought I was going to die," Delilah said quietly after several minutes had passed. "When the coach overturned and I went into the water, I truly believed that was the end." "You are tougher than you think," Travis said. "Most people would have panicked and let go. You held on." "I am not tough at all," Delilah replied with a shaky laugh. "I am a seamstress from Philadelphia. The most dangerous thing I have ever done is cross a busy street. This whole journey has been terrifying from start to finish." Travis looked at her with new understanding. She was an Easterner, probably raised in comfort and safety, now facing the harsh reality of the frontier. "What made you come west?" "My parents died 6 months ago. Yellow fever. I had nowhere else to go and my uncle offered me a home." Delilah's voice was steady despite her shivering. "I sold everything I owned to pay for the journey. All of my possessions were in that stagecoach." "I am sorry about your parents," Travis said. The loss of family was something he understood all too well. His own parents had died when he was 18, leaving him to run their small ranch alone. That had been 8 years ago, and he still remembered the hollow feeling of being suddenly alone in the world. "Thank you." Delilah was quiet for a moment. "Were you traveling when you found me?" "Heading back to my ranch. I had been in town picking up supplies." Travis gestured toward Thunder. "Lucky for you, I decided to take the river road instead of the main trail. Otherwise, I never would have seen that coach go over." "Then I owe you my life," Delilah said, turning to look at him. Even in the dim light filtering through the storm, Travis could see that she had striking features. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that seemed to look right through him. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with delicate prettiness and everything to do with character. "You do not owe me anything," Travis said gruffly, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same." "I do not think that is true," Delilah said, "but I will not argue with you tonight." They fell silent again, listening to the storm. The worst of it seemed to be passing, though rain still fell steadily. Travis could feel Delilah shivering beside him, and wished he had more to offer her than a damp bedroll and a rocky shelter. She had already lost so much, and now she had lost everything she owned. It was a hard introduction to life in the Wyoming territory. "Tell me about Fort Laramie," Delilah said eventually. "What kind of place is it?" Travis considered his answer. "It is a rough town. Started as a fur trading post, then became a military fort. Now it is a mix of soldiers, ranchers, merchants, and drifters. There are good people there and bad people, just like anywhere else." "Your uncle, what is his name?" "Samuel Parker." "Do you know him?" "I know of him. His mercantile is one of the better establishments in town. He is fair in his dealings, or so I have heard." Travis had actually done business with Samuel Parker several times and found him to be an honest man, but he saw no need to elaborate. "You will be in good hands with him." "I hope so," Delilah said softly. "I have been traveling for 3 weeks and I am so tired. I just want to stop moving, to have a place where I belong." There was such longing in her voice that Travis felt something tighten in his chest. He understood that feeling too. After his parents died, he had thought about leaving Wyoming, going somewhere new where everything would not remind him of his loss. But in the end, he had stayed. The ranch was his home, his connection to the family he had lost. It was lonely sometimes, but it was where he belonged. "You will find your place," Travis said. "Give it time." Delilah looked at him again, and this time she smiled slightly. "You are kind, Mr. Yancey. Thank you for that and for saving my life." "Travis," he corrected. "No need for formality after what we have been through tonight." "Then you must call me Delilah." Travis nodded, oddly pleased by the familiarity. They settled back into silence, but it was a comfortable one now. The storm continued to rage but gradually began to lose its fury. By the time the first gray light of dawn began to seep into the sky, the rain had diminished to a light drizzle. Travis stood and stretched his stiff muscles. He was damp and cold, but years of living on the frontier had taught him to endure discomfort. He checked on Thunder, then turned to Delilah. She was still wrapped in his bedroll, looking exhausted but no longer shaking quite so violently. "How are you feeling?" Travis asked. "Like I was nearly drowned and spent the night on a rock," Delilah said, but there was humor in her voice. "Other than that, perfectly well." Travis found himself almost grinning. She had spirit, this Eastern seamstress. "Can you ride? It will be easier if we both mount Thunder, but it is a long way to town." "I can manage," Delilah said, standing up. She swayed slightly but caught herself. "I have never been on a horse before, though." "Never." Travis could not hide his surprise. He had been riding since before he could walk, and he sometimes forgot that not everyone grew up around horses. "Carriages and streetcars in Philadelphia," Delilah explained. "We had no need for horses." "Well, you are about to learn." Travis led Thunder out from the overhang and into the weak morning light. The storm had passed, leaving the landscape sodden and the river still running high and muddy. There was no sign of the stagecoach or the unfortunate driver. Travis mounted first, then extended his hand down to Delilah. "Put your foot in the stirrup and I will pull you up behind me." It took 2 attempts, but Delilah managed to scramble up onto Thunder's back. She sat side-saddle behind Travis, her arms wrapped tentatively around his waist. "I feel very high up," she said nervously. "Just hold on to me and Thunder will do the rest," Travis assured her. He urged the horse forward, keeping to a walk. The ground was treacherous after the storm and he did not want to risk a fall. As they rode, the sun began to burn through the clouds, warming the air. Steam rose from the wet earth, creating an eerie mist that hung low over the prairie. Delilah's grip on Travis's waist gradually relaxed as she became more accustomed to the motion of the horse. He was acutely aware of her presence behind him, the weight of her body pressed against his back, the occasional brush of her breath against his neck. "It is beautiful," Delilah said after they had been riding for about an hour. "I did not expect it to be so beautiful." Travis looked at the landscape with fresh eyes, trying to see it as she must. The rolling prairie stretched out in all directions, dotted with sage and wildflowers. In the distance, mountains rose purple against the sky. It was beautiful, he supposed, though he had seen it so often that he sometimes forgot to notice. "It is harsh, too," Travis said. "Especially for someone not used to it. Winters are brutal, summers are hot and dry, and there is always the danger of storms like last night." "I am not afraid of hardship," Delilah said firmly. "I came west knowing it would be difficult. I am ready to work and to build a new life." Travis believed her. There was steel in her voice that matched the determination he had seen in her eyes when she let go of that stagecoach. Delilah Parker might be an Easterner, but she was not soft. They rode in silence for a while longer, making steady progress toward Fort Laramie. Around midday, Travis spotted a small creek that had not flooded and stopped to let Thunder drink and rest. He helped Delilah down from the horse and she stood on shaky legs, wincing. "I am going to be very sore tomorrow," she said ruefully. "Riding is more difficult than it looks." "You will get used to it," Travis said. He had some jerky and hardtack in his saddlebags and he offered them to Delilah. She accepted gratefully, though she made a face when she tried the hardtack. "This is like eating a rock," she said. "It keeps well and fills your belly," Travis replied with a shrug. "Not meant to be fancy." They ate their meager meal by the creek, sitting on a fallen log. Delilah asked questions about the territory, and Travis answered as best he could. He told her about the different ranches in the area, the frequent conflicts with rustlers, the long, hard winters when snow could isolate a person for weeks at a time. He tried to paint an honest picture, not wanting her to harbor any romantic illusions about frontier life. But as he talked, Travis found himself also sharing more personal details. He told her about his ranch, how he ran cattle and horses on 2,000 acres of land his father had claimed years ago. He described the house his parents had built, a simple structure of logs and stone that had stood strong through countless storms. He even mentioned his loneliness, though he tried to make light of it. Delilah listened intently, her eyes never leaving his face. "It sounds like a good life," she said when he finished. "Hard but good, honest." "It is the only life I know," Travis said. "I am not sure I would be suited to anything else." "I think people are more adaptable than they realize," Delilah said thoughtfully. "6 months ago, I could not have imagined leaving Philadelphia. Now here I am, soaking wet and eating rocks, and somehow I am still alive." Travis found himself laughing, a rusty sound that surprised him. He could not remember the last time he had laughed with someone. Life on the ranch was solitary, and his trips to town were usually brief and business-focused. He had acquaintances but few real friends. Talking with Delilah felt different, easy in a way he had not experienced in years. "We should keep moving," Travis said, standing up. "We still have several hours of riding ahead." They continued their journey, and as the afternoon wore on, Fort Laramie finally came into view. The fort itself was a collection of white buildings arranged around a parade ground, with the town sprawling out around it in a haphazard collection of wooden structures. Even from a distance, Travis could see people moving about, going about their daily business. "That is Fort Laramie," Travis said, pointing. "Your uncle's mercantile is on the main street near the center of town." Delilah did not respond immediately, and Travis wondered if she was feeling nervous about finally arriving. But when she spoke, her words were not what he expected. "I have finally found my home," she said softly, her arms tightening around his waist. "I can feel it. This is where I am meant to be." Travis was not sure how to respond to that. He had heard other settlers express similar sentiments when they first arrived, only to flee back east after a hard winter or a run of bad luck. The Wyoming Territory had a way of testing people, of sorting out those who were truly committed from those who were just chasing a dream. But something in Delilah's voice made him think she might be different. She had already survived a stagecoach crash and a flood. Maybe she had what it took to survive the rest of it, too. They rode into Fort Laramie, and Travis guided Thunder down the main street. People turned to stare at them, no doubt wondering who the bedraggled woman was and what her story might be. Travis ignored the looks and stopped in front of Parker's Mercantile, a well-maintained building with large windows displaying various goods. Travis dismounted and helped Delilah down. She stood for a moment, looking at the mercantile with an expression that mixed hope and apprehension. Before she could say anything, the door burst open and a portly man with graying hair rushed out. "Delilah, good Lord, child, what happened to you?" Samuel Parker hurried forward, his face creased with concern. "Uncle Samuel," Delilah said, and suddenly she was crying, all the fear and exhaustion of the past day catching up with her at once. Samuel wrapped her in his arms, patting her back awkwardly. There, you are safe now. Come inside and tell me everything." Samuel looked over Delilah's shoulder at Travis. "And you are, Travis Yancey. I found your niece after her stagecoach crashed in the storm last night. The driver was lost in the flood." Samuel's expression turned grave. Jake Morrison was driving that coach. He was a good man. This is a terrible loss. He shook his head, then extended his hand to Travis. "But I am grateful to you for saving Delilah. Please come inside. You look like you could use some hot food and dry clothes." Travis was about to decline, feeling suddenly out of place, but Delilah turned to look at him with such pleading in her eyes that he found himself nodding. "I could eat," he admitted. Samuel ushered them both into the mercantile and locked the door behind them. He called up the stairs at the back of the store, and a middle-aged woman appeared, her face lighting up when she saw Delilah. "Martha, this is my niece Delilah. She has had a terrible ordeal. Can you take her upstairs and get her into dry clothes? And see if you can find something for Mr. Yancey as well." Martha, who Samuel introduced as his wife, took charge immediately. She led Delilah upstairs while Samuel showed Travis to a small back room where he kept extra supplies. Travis changed out of his wet clothes into borrowed trousers and a shirt that were a bit too large, then rejoined Samuel in the main store. "Sit down, please," Samuel said, gesturing to a chair near the pot-bellied stove in the corner. He poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot that sat warming on top of the stove and handed one to Travis. "Now tell me exactly what happened." Travis recounted the events of the previous night, from spotting the overturned stagecoach to sheltering through the storm to the ride to Fort Laramie. Samuel listened intently, his face growing more and more distressed. "Jake Morrison," Samuel said again when Travis finished. "I have known him for 15 years. He drove that route twice a month, never missed a trip. His wife is going to be devastated." "I am sorry," Travis said, meaning it. Death was a common part of life on the frontier, but that did not make it any easier to bear. "It is not your fault. If anything, we should be thanking you for saving Delilah. If you had not been there." Samuel trailed off, not wanting to complete the thought. He took a sip of his coffee and studied Travis over the rim of his cup. "You run the Yancey Ranch, correct? About 20 miles northeast of here." "That is right. Your father was a fair man. I was sorry to hear of his passing, and your mother's as well." Samuel set down his cup. "You have been running that place alone for how long now?" 8 years. "That is a long time to be on your own." Samuel's tone was casual, but Travis sensed there was a point he was working toward. "You must come to town occasionally, though, for supplies and such." "Often enough," Travis said noncommittally. He was starting to feel uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Before Samuel could continue, the door to the stairs opened and Delilah emerged. She had changed into a simple blue dress, and her hair had been brushed and pinned up. Even exhausted and pale, she was lovely. Travis found himself staring and had to look away. "Much better," Martha said, following Delilah down the stairs. "Though you need rest and a proper meal. Come, I have stew warming in the kitchen." They all moved to the living quarters above the store, where Martha served bowls of hearty beef stew and thick slices of bread. Travis ate hungrily, only realizing how famished he had been when the food was in front of him. Delilah ate more slowly, but she cleaned her bowl. As they ate, Delilah told her aunt and uncle more about the crash and her rescue. Samuel and Martha listened with growing amazement, occasionally glancing at Travis with expressions of gratitude. Travis focused on his food, wishing he could just slip away. He was not comfortable being the center of attention. "You must let us repay you," Samuel said when Delilah finished her story. "Anything you need from the store, it is yours." "That is not necessary," Travis said. "I am just glad I was there to help." "It is very necessary," Delilah said firmly. "You saved my life, Travis. That is not something I will ever forget." The way she said his name with such warmth and certainty made something flutter in Travis's chest. He looked at her and found her gazing at him with those penetrating eyes, and for a moment he could not look away. Martha cleared her throat delicately, breaking the spell. "Well, Delilah, you must be exhausted. Let me show you to your room. You can rest while the men talk business." Delilah looked like she wanted to protest, but she was swaying with fatigue. She allowed Martha to lead her to a small bedroom at the back of the living quarters. Travis watched her go, feeling an unexpected sense of loss. "She is a remarkable young woman," Samuel said once the women were gone. "Strong like her father was. He was my younger brother, and he never gave up on anything he set his mind to. I see the same quality in Delilah." "She seems very determined," Travis agreed. "She will need to be making a life out here." Samuel refilled Travis's coffee cup. "Martha and I never had children of our own. Having Delilah here, it is a blessing. I want to make sure she is happy and safe." Travis nodded, not sure what Samuel expected him to say. The older man studied him for a long moment, then seemed to come to some decision. "I hope you will visit us again, Travis. Soon. Delilah will want to thank you properly once she has recovered." "There is no need," Travis started to say, but Samuel cut him off. "There is every need. Besides, I think Delilah could use a friend here, someone closer to her own age who understands the territory." Samuel's meaning was clear, and Travis felt heat rise to his face. "I should be getting back to the ranch," Travis said, standing up. "I have already been gone longer than I planned." Samuel did not push, but he smiled knowingly as he walked Travis back down to the store. "Come by any time. And thank you again for what you did." Travis collected his dried clothes, which Martha had thoughtfully hung near the stove, and changed back into them. He said his goodbyes and stepped out into the late afternoon sun. Thunder was still tied up outside, patiently waiting. Travis untied him and was about to mount when the door to the mercantile opened again. Delilah stood there, wrapped in a shawl. "I wanted to say goodbye properly," she said, "and to tell you again how grateful I am." "You should be resting," Travis said, but he made no move to leave. "I will rest better knowing I thanked you." Delilah stepped closer. "I meant what I said earlier. I have finally found my home. I can feel it deep in my bones. And I have you to thank for giving me the chance to make that home." "You would have done the same for me," Travis said. "Perhaps. But you were the one who rode into a flood in the middle of a storm. That takes courage." Delilah reached out and touched his arm lightly. "I hope I will see you again, Travis." "I am sure you will. Fort Laramie is not that big." "Good." Delilah smiled, and it transformed her face, making her look younger and happier than Travis had yet seen her. Until then. She turned and went back inside, leaving Travis standing on the street with a strange warmth spreading through his chest. He mounted Thunder and rode out of town, but he found himself looking back more than once as Fort Laramie receded into the distance. The ride back to his ranch should have been a time for Travis to clear his head and focus on the work waiting for him. Instead, he spent the entire journey thinking about Delilah Parker. He thought about her courage as she clung to that overturned stagecoach, her determination as she let go and reached for his hand, her resilience as she endured a cold, uncomfortable night on a rock. He thought about the way she had looked at him, with gratitude and something else he could not quite identify. And he thought about her words, "I have finally found my home." Travis had spent 8 years alone on his ranch, content with his solitary existence. He had occasional companions, other ranchers he worked with during roundups or neighbors who stopped by for help with various tasks. But he had never felt the pull of real connection, the desire to share his life with someone. Now, after spending less than a day with Delilah Parker, he felt something shift inside him. It was uncomfortable and unfamiliar, this yearning for something more. When Travis reached his ranch as the sun was setting, he went through his evening routine mechanically. He cared for Thunder, fed his other horses and the cattle, checked the fence lines near the house. But his mind was elsewhere, replaying every conversation he had had with Delilah, every look she had given him. He ate a cold dinner standing by the stove, then sat in his father's old chair and tried to read. But the words blurred together, and eventually he gave up. He went to bed early and lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and wondering when he had become such a fool. The next few days passed in their usual rhythm. Travis worked hard, mending fences, moving cattle to better grazing, breaking a young horse he had been training. The physical labor helped clear his mind during the day, but at night the thoughts of Delilah always returned. He told himself he was being ridiculous. He barely knew the woman. She was probably not even thinking about him. But on the fourth day after their meeting, Travis found himself riding toward Fort Laramie. He told himself he needed supplies anyway, which was true enough. He definitely did not need to clean up and put on his better shirt, but he did that too. The whole ride into town, he argued with himself about what he was doing. This was foolish. He had work to do, but his hands guided Thunder toward Fort Laramie anyway. When he arrived, Travis tied Thunder outside Parker's mercantile and stood for a moment, gathering his courage. What was he even going to say? Before he could talk himself into leaving, the door opened and Samuel Parker emerged. "Travis, good to see you. Come for those supplies I offered you." "I could use a few things," Travis admitted. Come in, come in." Samuel held the door open. "Delilah is in the back doing inventory. She will be pleased to see you." Travis followed Samuel into the store, his heart beating faster than it should. The mercantile was well stocked with everything from foodstuffs to tools to bolts of fabric. Samuel began gathering items and setting them on the counter, chatting amiably about the weather and recent events in town. A few minutes later, Delilah appeared from the back room, carrying a ledger. She stopped short when she saw Travis, her eyes widening. "Travis, I did not know you were coming to town today." "Neither did I until this morning," Travis said, which was mostly true. Delilah smiled and came to stand beside her uncle at the counter. She looked much better than the last time Travis had seen her. The shadows under her eyes were gone and her face had color in it. The blue dress she wore complemented her dark hair and eyes. Travis had to remind himself to breathe. "How have you been?" Delilah asked. "Is everything well at your ranch?" "Well enough, and you? Are you settling in?" "I am. Uncle Samuel has been teaching me the business and Aunt Martha has been introducing me to people in town. Everyone has been very welcoming." Delilah paused, then added, "Though I have been hoping you would come by." "Have you?" Travis said, his mouth suddenly dry. "Of course, I wanted to." Delilah glanced at her uncle, who was making a very poor show of not listening. "Perhaps we could speak outside." "Good idea," Samuel said quickly. "Travis, I will get these supplies wrapped up. You two go ahead." Travis and Delilah stepped out onto the wooden sidewalk that ran in front of the stores. The afternoon sun was warm and the street was busy with people going about their business. They walked a short distance away from the mercantile and stood in the shade of an awning. "I am glad you came," Delilah said. "I have been thinking about you these past few days." "You have?" Travis felt like an idiot, repeating her words back to her, but he could not seem to form a coherent sentence. "Yes. I wanted to thank you again properly. What you did, pulling me from that flood, it was incredibly brave. You risked your own life for a stranger." "Anyone would have done the same," Travis said automatically. "No," Delilah said firmly. "Not anyone. You did. And I will always be grateful." She hesitated, then continued in a softer voice. "But it is more than gratitude. I feel like we connected that night during the storm. Like I knew you even though we had just met. Does that sound foolish? No, Travis said, his heart hammering. I felt it too. Delilah's face lit up. Truly, truly. Travis took a breath, trying to find the right words. I have not been able to stop thinking about you. I told myself I was being a fool, that you were just grateful and that was all, but I had to see you again. I am so glad you did. Delilah reached out and took his hand, a bold gesture that spoke of her Philadelphia upbringing where social rules were perhaps more relaxed. I know this is fast. We have only known each other a few days, but I feel something for you, Travis, something real. Travis looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt. I feel it too, he admitted, but I do not know what to do about it. I am just a rancher. I do not have much to offer. You have yourself, Delilah said. That is enough. They stood there on the street, holding hands and looking at each other, oblivious to the curious glances of passers-by. Travis felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to take a leap into the unknown. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Would you like to go riding with me? Travis heard himself ask. I could show you the territory, teach you more about horses, if you want to learn, that is. I would love that, Delilah said immediately. When? Tomorrow. I could come by in the morning if your uncle can spare you for a few hours. I will make sure he can. Delilah squeezed his hand. Thank you, Travis. They went back into the mercantile, where Samuel had Travis's supplies packed and ready. Travis paid for what he could not accept as a gift, despite Samuel's protests, then said his goodbyes. As he rode back to the ranch, he felt lighter than he had in years. The future, which had seemed so fixed and unchanging, suddenly felt full of possibility. True to his word, Travis returned to Fort Laramie the next morning. He brought a gentle mare named Daisy for Delilah to ride, along with a side saddle he had found in his barn. It had belonged to his mother, and he hoped Delilah would not mind using it. Delilah came out of the mercantile wearing a practical riding skirt and boots that Martha had helped her acquire. Her hair was braided down her back, and her eyes shone with excitement. I am ready for my first real riding lesson, she announced. Travis helped her onto Daisy and spent a few minutes showing her how to hold the reins and use her legs to guide the horse. Delilah was a quick learner, and soon they were riding slowly down the street and out of town. Travis led them to an open meadow about a mile from Fort Laramie, where Delilah could practice without worrying about traffic or obstacles. For the next hour, Travis taught Delilah the basics of riding. She fell twice, both times laughing as Travis helped her back onto Daisy. Her laughter was infectious, and Travis found himself grinning more than he could remember doing in years. They took a break and sat in the grass, watching the horses graze nearby. This is wonderful, Delilah said, tipping her face up to the sun. I never imagined I could feel so free. That is what I love about the territory, Travis said. There is space to breathe here, room to be yourself. Tell me more about your ranch, Delilah said. What is a typical day like for you? Travis described his daily routine, from the early morning chores to the constant maintenance required to keep a ranch running. He told her about the cattle drives, the harsh winters, the satisfaction of watching a herd thrive under his care. As he talked, he realized he was painting a picture of a life that could be lonely but also deeply rewarding. It sounds like hard work, Delilah said, but good work, meaningful. It is the only work I know, Travis said. My father taught me everything. He loved this land, and I suppose I do too, even though it can be unforgiving. I think I am going to love it as well, Delilah said. She looked at Travis, her expression turning serious. I meant what I said when we arrived in Fort Laramie. I have found my home. I felt it the moment I saw this territory, and getting to know you, it only confirms that feeling. Travis reached out and took her hand as she had taken his the day before. "I am glad you feel that way, because I find myself hoping you will stay." "I am not going anywhere," Delilah promised. They spent the rest of the day together, riding and talking and learning about each other. Travis discovered that Delilah had a sharp wit and a love of books, that she had worked as a seamstress, but had always dreamed of having her own dress shop, that she was both practical and romantic in equal measure. Delilah learned that Travis was more educated than she had expected, that his mother had insisted he learn to read and write well, that he loved horses more than cattle but kept cattle because they were more profitable, that beneath his quiet exterior was a man capable of deep feeling. When the sun began to set, Travis reluctantly led them back to Fort Laramie. He helped Delilah dismount in front of the mercantile and found himself not wanting to let go of her waist. She looked up at him, her face flushed from the day's activities, and he nearly kissed her right there on the street. But Samuel opened the door at that moment, breaking the spell. "Did you have a good ride?" Samuel asked, his eyes twinkling. "Wonderful," Delilah said. "Travis is an excellent teacher." "I am glad to hear it. Travis, will you stay for supper? Martha has made more than enough." Travis accepted, and the evening passed pleasantly. Martha proved to be an excellent cook, and the conversation around the table was warm and inclusive. Samuel and Martha clearly approved of Travis's interest in Delilah, and they made subtle efforts to leave the two alone together whenever possible. This pattern repeated over the next several weeks. Travis found reasons to come to Fort Laramie more often than he ever had before. Sometimes he took Delilah riding. Other times they simply walked around town or sat on the porch of the mercantile and talked. They learned each other's stories, shared their hopes and fears, and gradually fell in love. For Travis, falling in love with Delilah was like watching the sunrise after a long night. It happened slowly, then all at once, until he could not imagine his life without her in it. He loved her courage and her laughter, her determination and her gentleness. He loved the way she listened when he talked about his ranch, asking thoughtful questions and remembering every detail. He loved the way she was not afraid of hard work, jumping in to help Martha around the house or Samuel in the store without complaint. Delilah fell in love just as deeply. She loved Travis's quiet strength, the way he cared for his animals with such tenderness, his absolute reliability. She loved that he treated her as an equal, never condescending or dismissive of her opinions. She loved his dry sense of humor and the rare, brilliant smiles that transformed his usually serious face. And she loved the way he made her feel safe and cherished, as if she was the most precious thing in his world. 2 months after they met, Travis took Delilah out to his ranch for the first time. She had been eager to see it, and Travis was nervous about showing her his home. The house was modest and the work was hard. He worried she would find it too rough, too isolated. But when they arrived and Delilah saw the ranch laid out before her, she turned to Travis with tears in her eyes. "It is perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect." Travis showed her everything. The barn where he kept his horses, the paddocks and pastures, the small cabin where a ranch hand stayed during busy seasons, though Travis currently ran everything alone. He showed her the house, pointing out the rooms his parents had built and the additions he had made. It was simple but sturdy, with a large fireplace and windows that let in plenty of light. "I can see us here," Delilah said softly as they stood in the main room. "I can imagine a life here with you." Travis's heart nearly stopped. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" Delilah turned to face him, her eyes shining. "I am saying that I love you, Travis Yancey. I have loved you almost from the moment you pulled me from that flood. You are everything I have been searching for, even though I did not know I was searching." "I love you too," Travis said, the words coming easily now that she had spoken first. "I think I started loving you when you looked at me in that storm and let go of the only thing keeping you alive, trusting that I would catch you." "Will you catch me now?" Delilah asked. "If I take another leap?" Instead of answering with words, Travis pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It was their first kiss, and it was everything a first kiss should be, sweet and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Marry me," Travis said. It was not the romantic proposal he had been planning, but the words came straight from his heart. "I know it has only been 2 months, but I know my heart. I want to spend my life with you, Delilah. I want to build a home with you, a family. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Delilah said immediately, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They kissed again, sealing their commitment. When they finally returned to Fort Laramie that evening, they went straight to Samuel and Martha to share their news. The older couple was delighted, Martha immediately beginning to plan a wedding while Samuel clapped Travis on the back and welcomed him to the family. The wedding took place 6 weeks later, on a crisp October day in 1875. It was a simple ceremony held at the fort's chapel, with many of the townspeople attending. Delilah wore a dress she had sewn herself from fabric Samuel had ordered special from Denver, a beautiful white silk that made her look like an angel. Travis wore his best suit and could not stop staring at his bride. Samuel walked Delilah down the aisle and placed her hand in Travis's with tears in his eyes. The chaplain spoke the familiar words of the marriage ceremony, and Travis and Delilah repeated their vows in strong, clear voices. When the chaplain pronounced them husband and wife, Travis kissed Delilah with all the love in his heart, while their friends and neighbors cheered. The celebration afterward was joyful, with food and music and dancing. Travis, who normally avoided social gatherings, found himself enjoying every moment. Seeing Delilah so happy, surrounded by people who had embraced her as one of their own, filled him with a contentment he had not known was possible. As the sun set, Travis and Delilah said their goodbyes and rode back to the ranch together, Delilah seated on Daisy, who had become her horse. They arrived as the stars were beginning to appear, and Travis helped Delilah down from her mare with tender care. "Welcome home, Mrs. Yancey," Travis said, lifting her into his arms to carry her over the threshold. "I am home," Delilah said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I have finally found my home with you." Travis carried his bride into their house and closed the door on the outside world. Their life together was just beginning. The first months of marriage were an adjustment for both of them. Delilah had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, so different from anything she had experienced in Philadelphia. Travis had to learn to share his space and his life after 8 years of solitude. But they were both committed to making their marriage work, and love made the difficulties easier to bear. Delilah threw herself into her new role with characteristic determination. Martha had taught her the basics of frontier cooking, and she worked hard to master the skill. The first few meals were disasters, but Travis ate them without complaint and praised her efforts. By Christmas, Delilah had become a competent cook, able to make hearty stews and fresh bread that Travis genuinely enjoyed. She also took over much of the household management, freeing Travis to focus on the ranch work. She tended a vegetable garden, preserved food for the winter, and kept the house clean and comfortable. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, they would sit by the fire and read together, or Travis would play the harmonica his father had taught him to play while Delilah sewed. But Delilah did not just stay in the house. She was genuinely interested in the ranch and wanted to be involved in all aspects of it. Travis taught her to care for the horses, to recognize signs of illness in the cattle, to mend fences and handle the dozens of other tasks that kept a ranch running. She proved to be a quick learner and a hard worker, never complaining about the difficulty or the long hours. In January, a blizzard hit the territory, dumping 3 feet of snow and driving the temperature so low that the water in the wash basin froze solid overnight. Travis and Delilah were trapped in the house for 4 days, venturing out only to care for the animals. But instead of feeling trapped, Travis found he enjoyed the enforced closeness. They spent the time talking and planning their future, making love and dreaming out loud about the life they were building together. "I want children," Delilah said one night as they lay in bed, wrapped in quilts and listening to the wind howl outside. "I know we have not talked about it much, but I want a family with you, Travis." "I want that too," Travis said, pulling her closer. "I think you will be a wonderful mother. And you will be a wonderful father, patient and kind, just like you are with the horses." Travis laughed. "I hope our children are less skittish than the horses." "They will be perfect," Delilah said confidently, "because they will be ours." Spring came eventually, as it always did, and with it new life on the ranch. Several of the cows had calves and one of the mares foaled. Delilah was there for the birth, watching in awe as the tiny foal struggled to its feet on wobbly legs. Travis saw tears on her cheeks and pulled her close. "Life is precious," Delilah said softly. "Every single moment of it." By summer, the ranch was thriving. The cattle were fat and healthy, the horses were strong, and Travis and Delilah had settled into a comfortable routine. They worked hard, but they also made time for each other, riding out to a favorite spot by a stream where they would picnic and talk for hours. These moments of peace and connection were the foundation of their marriage, keeping them close even when life got difficult. In September, Delilah realized she was pregnant. She waited until she was certain before telling Travis, wanting to be sure. When she finally shared the news one evening after supper, Travis's reaction was everything she had hoped for. He swept her into his arms and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Delilah asked, though she could clearly see that he was. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Travis said. He set her down gently, suddenly treating her like she was made of glass. "Are you well? You need to sit down. Should I get the doctor?" Delilah laughed at his sudden concern. "I am perfectly fine. Women have babies all the time, Travis. I am strong and healthy. Everything will be all right." But Travis could not help worrying. He had lost his own mother when he was young, and he knew the dangers that childbirth could bring. He insisted on taking Delilah to see the doctor in Fort Laramie, who examined her and pronounced her in excellent health. Travis was somewhat reassured, but he still hovered over Delilah for weeks afterward, trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work. Delilah tolerated his fussing with good humor for about a month before she finally put her foot down. "Travis, I love you, but you have to stop treating me like I am fragile. I am having a baby, not dying of consumption. I can still work." "But what if something happens?" Travis said, his worry evident. "Then we will deal with it together," Delilah said firmly. "But wrapping me in cotton wool is not going to prevent anything. Now I am going to go help you with the horses whether you like it or not." Travis knew better than to argue when Delilah used that tone. He let her work, though he kept a close eye on her and made sure she did not overdo it. As the months passed and Delilah's belly grew, Travis gradually relaxed. She remained healthy and strong, her spirits high despite the discomforts of pregnancy. Winter came again, and this time Travis made sure they were well prepared. He stocked the house with plenty of food and firewood, and he arranged for a ranch hand named Tom to stay in the cabin through the season. Tom was a reliable young man in his early 20s who had worked for Travis during Roundup and knew the ranch well. Having an extra pair of hands was a relief, especially with a baby on the way. Delilah's time came in March, during a late-season snowstorm. Travis had brought Martha out to the ranch a week earlier, and the older woman took charge immediately when Delilah's labor began. Travis was banished from the bedroom, left to pace in the main room with Tom for company. "She will be fine," Tom said, trying to be reassuring. "Mrs. Yancey is strong." "I know," Travis said, but his hands were shaking. The sounds coming from the bedroom, Delilah's cries of pain, were tearing him apart. He wanted to be with her to help her, but Martha had been firm that he would just be in the way. The labor lasted 8 hours, though to Travis it felt like 8 days. Finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard a new sound, the wail of a newborn baby. Travis's heart nearly stopped. A moment later, Martha opened the bedroom door, her face flushed but smiling. "You have a son," she said. "A big, healthy boy. And Delilah is fine, just tired. Go meet your son." Travis rushed into the bedroom. Delilah was propped up in bed, her face pale and her hair damp with sweat, but she was smiling. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. Travis approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe. "Come see him," Delilah said softly. "Come meet Thomas." Travis sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his son for the first time. Thomas had a cap of dark hair and a red, scrunched-up face. He was perfect. Travis reached out with one finger and touched the baby's tiny hand, marveling when the little fingers curled around his. "He is incredible," Travis whispered. "You are incredible. Thank you. We made him together," Delilah said. She was exhausted but radiant. "Our son. The first of many, I hope." "Let us get through this one first," Travis said with a shaky laugh. He leaned down and kissed Delilah's forehead. "I love you so much. I was so worried." "I know, but I told you I was strong." Delilah's eyes were already drifting closed. "Stay with us, always," Travis promised. He settled beside her on the bed, careful not to jostle her or the baby. Martha quietly withdrew, leaving the new family alone. As the sun rose over the ranch, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, Travis held his wife and son and felt a peace settle over him that he had never known before. This was what life was meant to be: love and family and home. All the lonely years, all the hardship, had led him to this moment. He thought about that stormy night 2 years ago when he had pulled a drowning woman from a flood, and he sent up a silent prayer of thanks that he had been in the right place at the right time. The years that followed were full and rich. Thomas grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his mother's determination and his father's quiet strength. 2 years after Thomas was born, Delilah gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, who had her father's serious eyes and her mother's bright smile. The ranch thrived under Travis's care, and he was able to hire 2 more hands to help with the work. Delilah never lost her love for the territory. She often said she could not imagine living anywhere else, that Wyoming was in her blood now just as much as it was in Travis's. She became known in Fort Laramie as a skilled seamstress and made dresses for many of the women in town, though she never charged much. It was something she did for love, not money. The Parker mercantile continued to prosper, and Samuel and Martha doted on their great-niece and great-nephew. Family dinners at the mercantile became a regular occurrence, with laughter and love filling the rooms above the store. Samuel often joked that rescuing Delilah from that flood was the best thing Travis had ever done, and Travis always agreed. When Thomas was 6 and Rose was 4, Delilah gave birth to another son, whom they named Daniel. 3 children kept Travis and Delilah busy, but they managed with help from Tom, who had become like family. and a young woman named Sarah who came out to the ranch to help with the children and the house. On their 10th anniversary, Travis took Delilah back to the spot where he had pulled her from the flood. The creek was peaceful that day, flowing gently between its banks. They stood hand in hand and looked at the water. "You remember what you said when we arrived in Fort Laramie?" Travis asked. "I have finally found my home," Delilah said immediately. "I remember every word, every feeling from that day. I meant it then and I mean it now." "I am glad," Travis said, "because I cannot imagine this life without you. You are my home, Delilah, you and the children. Everything I have, everything I am, it is all because you trusted me that night in the storm." "No," Delilah said, turning to face him. "It is because you were brave enough to ride into danger to save a stranger. It is because you are a good man, Travis Yancey, the best man I have ever known." Travis pulled her close and kissed her, the same way he had kissed her on their wedding day and every day since. The territory stretched out around them, wild and beautiful and unforgiving, but they had made a place for themselves within it. They had built a home, raised a family, created a life worth living. As they rode back to the ranch, Delilah looked at the house in the distance and felt the same certainty she had felt that first day. This was where she belonged. This was home, and she would not trade it for anything in the world. The children grew and life continued its steady rhythm. Thomas showed an aptitude for working with horses and spent hours with his father learning the trade. Rose was bright and curious, always asking questions and reading every book she could get her hands on. Daniel was the wild one, constantly getting into mischief, but charming his way out of trouble with his easy smile. Travis and Delilah grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They faced hardships, droughts that threatened the cattle, harsh winters that tested their resolve, the occasional illness or injury. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from each other and from the family they had built. When Thomas turned 18, he announced his intention to start his own ranch on land adjacent to his father's. Travis helped him get established, proud of the young man his son had become. Rose, at 16, had ambitions to become a teacher and began studying with the schoolmaster in Fort Laramie. Daniel, at 14, was still finding his way, but he had his parents' determination and Travis had no doubt he would find his path. Samuel and Martha both passed away within a year of each other when Delilah was in her 40s. Their loss was deeply felt, but they had lived long, full lives and had been surrounded by love until the end. The mercantile passed to a younger cousin, but the new owner kept the Parker name in honor of Samuel's memory. On their 20th anniversary, Travis gave Delilah a gift. A beautiful horse he had bred specifically for her, a mare with gentle eyes and a coat the color of honey. Delilah was moved to tears by the gesture, remembering that first day when Travis had taught her to ride on Daisy, who had long since passed away from old age. "She is perfect," Delilah said, stroking the mare's nose. "What should I name her?" "That is for you to decide," Travis said. "She is yours." "Hope," Delilah said after a moment's thought. "I will name her Hope, because that is what you gave me 20 years ago when you pulled me from that flood. You gave me hope for a new life, a new beginning, and look at what we have built." Travis looked at their ranch, at the house they had expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family, at the barns and paddocks and fields. He thought about their children, all three growing into fine young adults. He thought about the life he and Delilah had created together, built on love and trust and hard work. "It has been a good life," Travis said. "The best life," Delilah corrected, slipping her hand into his. "And it is not over yet. We still have many more years together." She was right. They had many more years, years filled with the joy of watching their children marry and have children of their own. Thomas married a rancher's daughter named Elizabeth and gave Travis and Delilah 4 grandchildren. Rose became a teacher as she had wanted and married one of the fort's officers, a good man who adored her. They had 3 children. Daniel eventually left Wyoming to seek his fortune in California, though he visited regularly and always said the territory was still home. Travis and Delilah aged gracefully, their hair turning gray and their movements slowing, but their love never diminished. They still took rides together on sunny afternoons, still sat by the fire in the evenings and talked about everything and nothing. The ranch was mostly run by Thomas now, but Travis still helped when he could, unable to give up the work that had defined so much of his life. On their 40th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Delilah stood up to make a speech. Her voice was not as strong as it once was, but it was steady. 40 years ago, I was drowning in a flood, certain I was going to die. Then a cowboy rode out of the storm and saved my life. But he did more than save my life. He gave me a home. He gave me a family. He gave me love beyond anything I had ever imagined. Travis Yancey, you are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I thank God every day that you were on that road at that exact moment. Travis stood and went to his wife, tears streaming down his face. I am the one who should be thanking God, he said. You made my life worth living. You turned a lonely house into a home. You gave me children and grandchildren and more happiness than any man deserves. I love you, Delilah. I always have and I always will. They kissed while their family cheered and applauded, and it was as sweet and true as the very first kiss they had shared 40 years before. Travis Yancey lived to be 78 years old. He died peacefully in his sleep one spring night, with Delilah holding his hand. She was devastated by his loss, but she took comfort in the life they had lived together, the family they had created, the love that would continue even after death. Delilah lived another 5 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, who all adored her. She never left the ranch, saying it was her home and she would die there as Travis had. And she did, passing away quietly one morning with the sun streaming through the windows and the sound of her grandchildren playing outside. They were buried together on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple stone that read, Travis Yancey and Delilah Yancey, beloved parents and grandparents, united in life and in death. The ranch continued, passed down through generations. Thomas's children, and then his grandchildren ran it, always remembering the story of how it all began. The story of a cowboy who rode into a storm to save a drowning woman, and how that woman declared she had finally found her home. It became family legend, told and retold until the details took on an almost mythical quality. But at its heart, it was a simple story. A story of courage and chance, of love and commitment, of 2 people who found each other at exactly the right moment and built a life together that lasted a lifetime. It was a story of the American West, of the hardships and the triumphs, the loneliness and the love that could bloom even in the harshest landscape. And it was a story with a happy ending, the kind that made you believe that true love was real and that home was not a place but a person. The kind of story that deserved to be remembered and passed down, a testament to what 2 people could achieve when they faced the world together. The ranch still stands today, more than 100 years after Travis first pulled Delilah from that flood. The house has been renovated and expanded, the barns rebuilt, the land divided and redistributed. But the hill where Travis and Delilah are buried remains untouched, a peaceful spot where their descendants come to remember and to tell the story. The story of how a cowboy rescued a stranded traveler in a storm, and how she declared she had finally found her home. The story of Travis and Delilah Yancey, who proved that love could conquer anything, even the wild and unforgiving Wyoming territory. The story of a life well lived and a love that lasted beyond death. It is a story worth remembering. It is a story worth telling. It is their story, and it will never be forgotten.